pleasure to see you all. It's a Saturday, and in the afternoon, seeing you all here is welcome. It's a real pleasure to have you all. I am accompanying two very esteemed panelists here today, and we will talk about energy security issues and decarbonization in the Levant region. Not an easy geography. Eastern Mediterranean, as you all know, is very close to Europe and has always been in the middle of various conflicts, political issues. Although it is a bridge between Asia and Europe, it has always been, for probably this very reason, been in the middle of various international disagreements. Therefore, the dynamics in the region has been very unpredictable for many decades. And when we had stability in the region, we have seen some sort of cooperation, which is definitely needed for some sort of collaboration to achieve decarbonization or energy security. As you know, discoveries of hydrocarbons in Eastern Mediterranean region did not help to bring more stability, but intensified disputes, created further tensions among the players in the region. We were hoping that gas diplomacy was going to contribute to achieve dialogue, but disappointingly, it created further frustration in the region. And although it's been a decade, players in the region was not able to benefit from this, even at a time when Europe needs more energy in order to reduce its dependency to certain actors. The Eastern Mediterranean region is of strategic importance to the Western countries. Western countries these days are trying to promote rule-based international order more than ever. That's why in its neighborhood, the developments in the region are having direct impact in Europe. Why? Because energy policies, migration, or decarbonization, all these things require proper cooperation. And for that to happen, you need some sort of stability. As you know, in the continent of Europe, there are huge targets in order to achieve Green Deal by 2050 and all this kind of stuff. But we also know that it's not enough to achieve all these targets in Cyprus, but not to achieve them in Syria. It is not sufficient to achieve these targets in Greece, but not in Egypt. Or you may try to meet these targets in Italy, but it will not have any further impact if Libya is not able to come closer to these targets. So these matters are not yet even being discussed in our geography. Therefore, today, with some esteemed, very important players from the region, we will discuss energy security and decarbonization. I have Gabriel to my left. He's been following these matters for some time. I would like to introduce him. Neither of the panelists requires too much introduction, but I would say that he's a very senior researcher in the region, and I would like to invite him to say a few things about himself and then to talk about geopolitics of the region, as that will pave the ground to have further discussion on energy security and decarbonization. Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you so much. I hope this works. Do you hear me? Thank you so much. I'm Gabriel Haritos. I'm a researcher at the ELIAMEP think tank in Greece, and I teach history of the political relations between Israel, Greece, and Cyprus at the Gurion University of the Negev. I'm based in Israel. I would like to show an overview of what is going on right now in the region. I agree that at the end of the day, the gas question, the new element that we have in the region, did not help to the interconnectivity of the players of the region. And the reason is simple. All the players have a legitimization issue in the region from their perspective. I will give you some examples. Israel, the goal of the Israeli foreign policy and regional policy is to gain legitimization from the very first day of the establishment of the State of Israel, and to become a legitimate part in the Middle East, and now in the eastern part of the Mediterranean through gas. Hezbollah, a de facto player in South Lebanon, what means, okay, I like the music, but it is not the time. It's from outside. Okay. Hezbollah in the southern part of Lebanon. The gas reserves are off the coasts of the area that Hezbollah has control. Gaza Marine, new reserves. They belong to the Palestinian Authority, and the Israelis have said that they are recognizing the ability of the Palestinian Authority to exploit Gaza Marine, but the Palestinian Authority cannot control the maritime zone at the Gaza Marine. On the other hand, it's Hamas, another de facto state that is controlling Gaza, and it is impossible for them to control Gaza Marine. And of course, we have the issue of Cyprus, that there is an administrative entity not recognized by the international community. And there is an issue that, of course, it is an issue of economics and technocratic difficulties, but I believe that if Cyprus would be united, many of the difficulties would not be existing. So through the gas, and thanks to, or due to the gas issue, history is returning to us. All the problems that were not solved throughout the decades come to the surface once again in order to show us that we have to solve things of legitimacy, things of what belongs to whom. Because for these years, from the day that we have heard that we have gas reserves in the eastern part of the Mediterranean, we have to find a way to agree which reserves belong to whom. And if we do not solve this thing, if we do not agree upon a land registry in the maritime zones, then we will not be able to give an answer who is going to exploit which reserves and which reserves belong to which of the players of the region. Only two countries right now are able to exploit gas, natural gas, Israel and Egypt. And on the other hand, we have new elements in the whole saga. It is a saga because now we have the possibility of normalization of the relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And of course, this cannot be done if Israel will not understand that the two-state solution in the Palestinian issue is it is the core, it is the solution that the international community talks about and has agreed upon throughout the decades. On the other hand, we have India, a new player that suddenly comes up with a new plan, a more wide region that brings India and Europe through the Middle East in a new environment. And that makes the things even more complex. My comment is that once we understand that the legitimization of the rights of every player of the region is not resolved or not put into a new fragment, the dream of interconnectivity will just remain a dream. Politics are important. The technocrats are even more important, that even if we decide to have a clear answer what belongs to whom, then the technocrats have also to decide what is feasible and not feasible, and this is another question. Of course, about that thing, our friends Theo and Cleopatra are going to talk about it. Now, if we want to talk about what is going on these last days, it is important for me to point out what President Erdogan said just a week ago, that he had a meeting with Netanyahu in New York, and he talked about even common drillings with Israel and Turkey. He did not state specifically where those drillings are going to become a reality. From the Israeli part, there is no comment whatsoever of about what Erdogan said in New York. I might remind also the revelation of gas reserves in the Black Sea, and maybe Erdogan was talking about the possibility of Israeli companies and Turkish companies do drilling in the Black Sea. The media of Turkey inserted the Eastern Mediterranean into the words of President of Turkey. It is very important to point out that Athens and Nicosia did not ask from Israel to express what do they say about what has been said by Erdogan. If I could, and I finish my comment, if I could describe in a word what is the diplomatic climate and all these talks that go on this summer and they continue to go on, it is like a cocktail party. Everybody talks with everybody, and we have to wait for the dinner to start.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. Thank you. I think you are right. The limitation of maritime zones is a need. But if that doesn't happen, we should not anymore dream, because 2 days ago in Nicosia, we had 39 degrees heat. Global warming is there. So for decarbonization related stuff, we should stop dreaming and we should really start talking about how to make things happen. And let's hope that these recent dialogues between leaders in the region could be helpful to achieve a few things. To my right, we have Cleopatra Kitti. She is an advisor in international organizations. Previously lived in Brussels, did similar stuff, what I'm doing now. And she's basically also doing some reputation management now. She is the founder of Mediterranean Growth Initiative. And we all look forward to hear from her her analysis regarding regional cooperation with a specific focus on decarbonization. Thank you.
Thank you, Erhan. Thank you, Erhan. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Cleopatra. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Erhan. 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 Thank you, Ga To Cyprus Forum for inviting me. This is the third year I sit in a Cyprus Forum platform to discuss interconnectivity and energy. With my ELIAMEP hat on, Greece's preeminent European foreign policy and security think tank, and as a founder of the Mediterranean Growth Initiative, we're happy to collaborate with the Hellenic Observatory of the London School of Economics to co-create this panel as knowledge partners to the Cyprus Forum. And alongside you, my compatriot Erhan, Ercin, I want to welcome Gabriel as a colleague at the at the forum today, and my co-discussant Thodoris Arvanitopoulos. As I said, this is the third year that we discuss interconnectivity, and we look at it from a lens of what is possible, not what is not possible, because politics in this region have placed us in a situation that everything goes into the pot of geopolitics. But externalities like climate change or technology that knows no boundaries creates an impossible frontier for our politicians who want to think of what not is possible instead of what is possible. And that's where I'm going to focus on. I'm also going to do a little sort of backtracking, because in year 2 of the Cyprus Forum, we presented a project of geoeconomic analysis, which was funded by Norway grants, that looked at the offshore wind in Greece as a driver of geopolitical collaboration. We also did this analysis because it helped create the policy framework that the Greek parliament voted through on offshore wind capabilities and infrastructure in Greece. Actually, for that forum discussion on offshore wind and interconnectivity, we had then Foreign Minister Christodoulidis, today our President of the Republic of Cyprus, be a very active voice supporting interconnectivity in the region. Year 3 of the Cyprus Forum, we presented another important socioeconomic impact analysis on Cyprus's green pivot, how to reform the electricity market in Cyprus that would then help propel an interconnected electricity market. It was another study by the Norway EEA grants in collaboration with PRIO, where we brought stakeholders from Norway and Cyprus, but also from the EU, to look at the existing Scandinavian model, where it's a functioning market for electricity and decarbonization, the Nord Pool model. We compared it to the Net Pool model, which is the European functioning market-driven model. And then it became very clear that the future for Cyprus's electricity model is not to have a very small pie of a market in the Republic of Cyprus, but it's about the pie getting bigger, interconnecting it to the future regional potential for green renewable-based electricity. So we all know what we need to do. It's not that it's unknown and it's a mystery. And it's not about what is not possible. It's about what is possible. Now, let me just make a few remarks. We have a slide here that looks at the emissions. It's produced by ELIAMEP and the Mediterranean Growth Initiative. We've taken data from across the region, and we look at the emissions, CO2 emissions from across the lens of the region. It tells a regional story. And what we see is a lot of reds, a lot of pinks, a lot of light reds, which means that the region can only alleviate its heavy carbon footprint if it collaborates, if it helps each other, if every country helps each other. Because if Libya, what this slide shows here, is that Libya is the highest emitter of carbon in this region. But unless that carbon is captured or managed, it travels across the sea. If the Lebanese continue to throw their waste as part of their waste management solution into the Mediterranean Sea, it pollutes the rest of our beaches and marine ecosystem. If Turkey builds a nuclear plant on the shores of Akuyu, it risks the health and safety of citizens across the Mediterranean Sea. So it is a regional lens we need to look at. Therefore, actions can start at home, we can start nationally or in our neighborhoods, but the scale and the design and the vision must be regional. I conclude with a couple of thoughts. To design and fund change, we need governance, we need capital. Capital investment, where both private and public money are deployed, can only have the return if the projects are scalable and interconnected. Technology is an enabler for climate and sustainability solutions. The European Neighborhood Policy, the famous ENP for the southern neighborhood, has been a complete failure in my view, because it has failed to engage the countries of the region, it has failed to deliver citizen value. It preserves the elites, but it does not deliver accountability to the citizens of this region. It does not deliver value. It must be redesigned. Why? Because the EU itself has a complete different orientation. It has a green and digital orientation. So it needs to look at this region and bring it along alongside the EU's green and digital model. I mean, we still remain the least connected region in the world, and we are Europe's front line to Africa. So unless the Mediterranean, the East Mediterranean including this effort, Europe has failed. It must offer, so this new redesign, it must offer governance frameworks, financing frameworks, policy sticks and carrots for governments. It must offer financing frameworks for investors to unlock capital and design intra-regional infrastructure, de-risking private capital. We have seen the failure of the Eurasia interconnector, which has failed to attract the endorsement of the European Investment Bank and the European Commission. It was initially granted capital and then it was withdrawn. So that project needs to be redesigned. I mean, this is the destination point, a regional market mechanism for carbon storage, for carbon capture, electricity pricing and transfer that is transparent and interdependent and politically neutral. I mean, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. The Scandinavians and Central Europeans have already done it. So it's a matter of good design, good governance, and political, bold decision-making. We need politicians that are faithful to good governance. We need politicians and technocrats to work together to break the molds of what holds us back. We need to create possibilities for the future. And it's not about waiting for things to happen, because climate change is here and it's propelling that. It's an externality that needs to be managed. So politicians need to take that step change with technocrats on their side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this very comprehensive analysis and arguments put forward. He also sees European Union as a regional stability exporter, and you are raising that as your expectation in order to create further interconnectivity in the region. We will have more interactive in a minute, but we have Dr. Thodoris. Theo is a senior academician. He's very much focusing on energy economics He had very important articles published in top-tier academic journals. And today he will look from a different angle also to diversification issues. And I'm sure his presentation will be very complementary to the previous ones. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Okay, good. So first of all, we're really happy to be knowledge partners with ELIAMEP for the Cyprus Forum, and it's my first time here, so I'm really pleased to be here. And it's a very interesting topic, and I'm glad to discuss. So as I see it, can you hear me? Okay. We started from a macro perspective, from a more international relation perspective, and we move now to the more local, the micro perspective that I want to discuss on. And because I'm an economist, trained econometrician, and I will have a more technocratic focus, and I'll focus mainly on the local level, and I'll use Cyprus as an example because it's a unique case, and I'll draw parallels with my experience from the UK as a researcher. So why Cyprus is so peculiar? First of all, because it's isolated in terms of energy, right? And secondly, because there's no diversification in the energy mix. A bit more than 80% of energy, electricity is produced by fuel oil, heavy fuel oil and gas oil, but it's petrochemicals. And just 15%, 16% in 2021 was produced by renewables. That's a step forward. That means that there is investment, but there are barriers that we need to overcome, and that change is slow. There are two elements here. The first is decarbonization, and the second is energy security. Because if you have only one fuel in your energy mix, that means that you are liable to shocks in terms of price volatility in prices of petrochemicals, and also you rely on imports. Now, I believe that most of the imports of oil in this country are from Greece and Israel and then Turkey. So, you are really reliant on one fuel from other countries. Now, secondly, heavy fuel oil, petroleum it's highly emittent, right? So that doesn't help meeting the net zero targets and the transition that we want to achieve within the European Union. So what are the options? The options are to use natural gas and renewables, because natural gas is a transitory tool, right? And that can reduce emission, and move to renewables that are zero emissions, they produce no emission, right? Both are, they're not mutually exclusive, but they have pros and cons. And Gabriel discussed quite extensively on why it's difficult to use natural gas to extract it from the seabed in order to have it here and use it on our own instead of importing it, which is very difficult to happen because of geopolitical frictions. It's been discussed over the last 10 years and there's no prospect. And apart from that, from a technocratic perspective, it needs huge capital investment, even if there's agreement. And this will take a long time to see any outcome, right? So it's not something that in the short term will pay off. So you'll still rely on petroleum or petrochemicals. So the other option is renewable, and we're moving to that direction. Why renewables? It's a viable option because it's cheap. It doesn't need much capital investment, can happen quick, and produces zero emission, and it's your energy. So you solve the energy security and the decarbonization. Nonetheless, there are important barriers, and that's why it's not going forward. And one of the most important barriers, and this is not only in Cyprus, but in other countries as well that are trying to do that, is the lack of infrastructure. The electricity grids within countries are not built for the transition to renewables. So that needs to change. Imagine, for example, if you want to build a solar farm or a wind farm somewhere, you need to draw cables to bring the electricity. That needs investment, and somebody needs to invest that money, right? So that's big, like a huge capital investment that needs, not like hydrocarbon, but still you need to spend money. And also at the local level, within cities, within communities, the infrastructure is not sufficient enough to support the demand that is going to be within the city during the electrification of the economy in the future with EVs and all the new technologies. So that needs to be resolved. And at this point, I would like to draw parallels with what's happening in the UK and give you a few examples so we can see how this can happen quick and resolved quite efficiently. So Back in the year 2000, there was the energy community projects that were happening in the UK, and there were grassroots initiatives at the local community with funding from the government to install PVs and things like that with the local authority to support some of their needs in terms of energy. That was very primitive, no big investment, no economies of scale or anything. People realized that this has a future. But in order to have this, you need economies of scale, you need complex technologies, and you need investment. So this is where the private sector got in and collaborated with universities, with government funding, and with the business sector in order to make pioneering projects, demonstrator projects, as they called. And a couple of years ago, I was part of this huge consortium of many academics in the UK, and we were looking on different things in these developments. And I would like to give you an example of how it looks, these smart local energy systems. For example, in the Orkneys, for those that you don't know, there are small islands off the coast in Scotland, below Shetlands and above John O'Groats. And they were, like Cyprus, energy isolated. They were using oil to produce energy for the needs. So what they did is that they brought Scottish academics, businesses, and local communities, and they installed tide, wave, solar, and wind, not parks, but few turbines to support, to create energy. And then they installed batteries to accumulate this energy, to consume it at another point, and installed this as well in the houses, smart meters, so they can track the demand live. And then with complex technologies and AI, they were able to match supply and demand at real time and see how much they need at each point and how much available they have. And what they managed in just a few years' time, I think the project was like 4 or 5 years, to produce more energy than what they need. Obviously, this is a very small, special case happening off the coast of Scotland, where local communities, very small, whatever, but it's not the only one. There are other demonstrator projects, for example, in Oxford, focusing more on transport and on waste, energy from waste, things like that. So it's not one size fits all. You focus on specific characteristics of the location. You discuss with people in the area, and you resolve with the partnership with the business sector and with academia. So if we bring this knowledge back, and we're trying to do that in Cyprus, that would immediately unleash the potential to find the investment, the capital investment, to develop this infrastructure. It would give the power to the people to raise what they really need to discuss with the local authorities. So there is this participation element that is very important for people to accept new technologies, and also it get things going, right? And can give you renewable energy quite quickly. And having said all that, and I want to go now to the greater picture, Cyprus could be a hub. Projects like Euro-Asia Interconnector that it's probably doomed to fail, but because of huge capital investment probably that needed to attract in order to happen, have positive political effects in the business sector. Because if they see that there is the business sector, if they see that there is things like opening the market to other countries, then they can think that they can export energy and they can have profit. So they can go and invest. And that creates a positive loop of externalities that then, because the investment of the business sector is in the island, then the government is obliged, in a way, to find a way to resolve any problem so the investment stays here. And that creates a positive loop, and it creates a hub within the area, potentially. And I believe this is the way forward. It boils back down to what Cleopatra really excellent mentioned in her talk about good governance, political will, the capital markets, to find the capital investments, partnering with the business sector. That's all really important. So it can happen. We have the experience. It's been happening elsewhere. Just need people to really focus on this, spend time, and find solutions. And just a punchline, given we are today in the house, the home of cooperation, hopefully in the future, instead of using energy to raise barriers, energy would be used as a way forward to achieve bi-communal cooperation and beyond that. And I think this is the future for energy, to build bridges, not to raise barriers within countries. Thank you.
Special thanks to all of the panelists. Thank you, Theo. This was very helpful to show more on a regional and local level how interconnectivity could be done. And we need basically political will. It's not a huge thing, but it's yet to arrive into this region. As you know, there were efforts to create this political climate that will be more conducive for cooperation and collaboration on energy field, but it has been disrupted for some time. Now we have a glimpse of hope, at least in the region, so let's see how these things will evolve in the coming days. I would like to reiterate my special thanks and move to a kind of a more interactive session. I'm sure you have a few questions or comments that you would like to raise with us, with the panelists. We started from a geopolitical perspective, gave more concrete description of the decarbonization issue and what we need to do. And then we looked from Cyprus example, because basically, yes, Cyprus is isolated, and without having interconnectivity, not just Cyprus, but region will not have enough means to face or cope up with the challenges. Cyprus Forum is useful, but it looks like we need to have more energy forums in this region as such. Okay, now floor is yours. If you have any comments or questions, please.
Thank you for the wonderful remarks. So I have a very simple question, because I'm someone who is not very familiar with the subject. So given the geopolitical, dynamics, circumstances in the region, is really decarbonization possible? What do you think about it? I mean, on a wider scale, of course.
It is. It is. Israel in the local market has done a lot, but it is the decision of the government and the implementation, and of course the fact that actually, as we are speaking, Israel and Egypt are the two countries that are helping each other in order to go to that that policy and implementation. The rest of the states have to decide if they want to work with one another in order to promote this kind of energy and viability. It is up to the states.
Thank you. Please, Cleopatra.
It is possible, because it's not just, it's many different parts. It's how we capture carbon, it's how we store carbon, it's how we trade carbon. We already, as consumers here, I mean, on the Republic of Cyprus, we pay the most expensive electricity in Europe, or we're in the top tier of expensive electricity, because we carry as consumers the burden of carbon tax that the electricity authority is being punished by burning mazout. So I think our politicians and the people in decision-making positions have proven incompetent so far to find and design a way forward that is actionable and is future forward, that it captures the European. I mean, we also feel very far from what's Europe doing. So our leaders, or those in positions of authority, must really put their heart and mind into making this a reality. At this in this country. And then they actually must work to interconnect us to the region. There are no excuses not to. Everything else is failure.
If central governments cannot collaborate, how about local governments from different regions? Can you elaborate a little bit on that one?
Great question. Thanks. Thank you for that. And it speaks to what Thodoris was saying earlier. And we discussed it internally when we were preparing this panel, actually, that local governments, municipalities, authorities that are in the, let's say, the miniature government scale can collaborate with each other, either at best practice or reconnecting cities. So Tel Aviv and Limassol, for example, or I don't know, Beirut and Larnaca. Or so we can begin to create that momentum, even if it's waste management, waste processing, or even at the local government in Pila, where there are two communities working together, two municipalities working. How do we burn waste and turn it into energy? I mean, it's not like reinventing the wheel. It's looking at what happens elsewhere and start doing it.
Great.
It can happen. I'm sure about it. It needs political will. The thing is that if we want to be serious with ourselves and resolve that on an international level, we need to fix that first on a national level, right? For example, Greece. The islands are not connected to the grid, and they use fossil fuel. Crete, for example, I think still there is no connect. They're connecting it now with the mainland. But if you cannot, in your house, resolve your issues, and you cannot, draw a cable from Athens to Chania, then how you can resolve issues with Israel or with Egypt, right? So first we have to look at ourselves, fix that, and then go and look beyond, because it's exactly what's happening with the UK. It's been a pioneer in terms of decarbonisation and moving to renewables. You might say it was in a position of advantage or whatever, but you see what's happening now with the backtracking the last week in terms of climate pledges. So it needs to be resolved. I'm optimist, but I'm also a realist. And why? And because I'm realist, I believe first we need to fix it in our houses, in our local areas, within the nation, and then go out and say, look, we fixed it here. Let's collaborate now because you have an advantage, and convince them you have it, because everything is profit-driven in capitalism, at least. So, tell them why it's good for them. They're not, they would understand it if they can get profit out of it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Today I was checking what are the trend topics in Twitter. In this region, I checked both sides of the island, Greece and Turkey, nothing about energy, but in Europe, it's hydrogen. It tells a lot. I mean, we need to create some sort of awareness, and we need to ask and demand for it, and that's how it's going to happen. We have another question, Haritos.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very interesting discussion. So in terms of really achieving decarbonization, we need some renewable source of energy that is available 24 hours. But we don't have tidal energy. We don't really have wind energy. We only have solar. So what do we do about the night peak and the overnight? Do we build huge batteries? I mean, have there been economical viability studies on this? Thank you.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I mean, this, obviously, intermittency is a problem, but it's been resolved, and it will be resolved quite soon. And the thing is that developing smart energy systems, having multi-vector systems, different resources, so you might have wind, solar, you might have tide, you might have waste, you might have whatever, and then you connect it with an AI technology that balances demand and supply at a real time, and you have also some batteries that can back up for an hour or two. And with real-time management, this happens, and this happens elsewhere in the world. It's happening in the UK. And then, in the extreme peak demand cases that, for example, there are obviously in the UK as well cases that the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, and what do? Do we stay in the dark? No. You have a bit of, natural gas to burn for a couple of days. It raises the price because natural gas is more expensive. But then 2 days after, you can go back to the renewables. So you have a backup. In the future, with the further development of complex technologies and digital technologies and batteries, we'll be able to further resolve that. And just a final point. An interesting idea, for example, if you have a smart house, a smart home that has solar panels on the roof and a smart meter, and you see how much you consume, and then you have an EV, and you have a double way of transporting energy with EV, you can use your EV vehicle as a battery during the nighttime that you might not have solar power, or during breakdown of the system, that you have no electricity. So by decentralizing communities and houses, you make them more resilient. That's what we're trying to say. And you reduce demand on the national level. And that resolves many of the issues of intermittency and other things. And that's why I say one size doesn't fit all. Each case, it's unique. People know what they have and what they need. You can collaborate with them. The experience exists, so we can find solutions. And it's not that expensive.
Thank you.
Just to add, the UK has been linked to the Nord Pool, the Scandinavian network. So has Holland. And so has Germany. So in Europe, they are building interconnectors because you can't rely on one source. You need to diversify. Don't put all our eggs in one basket. We've learned that. So, and it's interconnectors and different types of energy producing systems. America, and we had a case study recently at INSEAD, Ford and the large automotive companies are building cars where the battery, the EV battery, can double up as an energy source to light up or give energy to homes, especially in rural America, or even in urban America, where they decouple the pressure of the national grid by using the car as an energy source. So, I mean, as I said, we will not reinvent the wheel. The solutions are out there. Just to say, both the Winds of Change project on offshore wind that we've done on Greece and the Cypriot electricity market study, the Green Pivot, are available on the Mediterranean Growth Initiative website, mgi.online. I think they're useful tools to have a look at and discuss.
Thank you.
Just to say a last word, I agree with Theo and with Cleopatra that since the governments do not listen to the people and do not see what in the environment, in the climate change, what is going on around them, the good start is from home, to start from our house, then from our community, then to find other communities that can understand how they are going to work together. This is a good start. And of course, the paradigm of North Europe and the Scandinavian countries is useful and it is implemented, but there are not any question of borders and legitimacy. The contrary happens in our place, in the region, and that's how our problems and our thoughts, it is like a dog that goes to find its tail and it cannot find its tail.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think while we were discussing to achieve interconnectivity between north and south of the island, it was really difficult. It was going to provide very good results for both sides. Both electricity grids was going to relieve, and both sides would have the ability to upgrade more solar energy to the grids, basically. But despite a lot of efforts from different and mostly European Commission, what is managed and achieved is very limited, and this sort of CBMs is very much needed between Nicosia municipalities, Greek and Turkish municipality, in the region, perhaps one day they should be able to try to collaborate with Tel Aviv, like Nicosia, North and South together. But also there are a lot of things that they should be striving to do and request help from European Commission, because I know that generally they have a position to support actively these sort of projects. Okay, we have one more question here, and then I'll check the time.
Yes, thank you for the whole panelists. This comes from a very curious point of view. Regarding to what you have just said, did recently a historical agreement signed between Israel and Lebanon regarding to maritime? I'm not very in full compliance with the details. I just wanted to have all of your opinion. Did it have a significance stabilizing the region? And because it was a disputed region, and since we live in a disputed region, and since maritime and EEZ around whole of the island is a disputed issue, can we make a good example on that? And just small comments on how can we use energy for a way of reconciliation and peace building on the island, also regarding to ISMET project. Can we also involve two communities bicommunally, realistically, to make it happen?
Thank you. I think we have one more question. Ambassador.
Thank you. Actually, I had two, but let's see if we get touched on them. One is related to Cyprus, and the other one is more the regional component. On Cyprus, I mean, I think we heard what needs to be done, but it's not happening. So my question is there enough discussion on the price of non-action? That's one question. And the second one that I would have on the regional, I mean, I heard Cleopatra talking about the EU, and it was mentioned a couple of times. Of course, we have EU member states in the region and non-EU member states, but what platform, I mean, what leadership should take, I would say, the lead, or where to look in order to get the interconnectivity, considering that at the national level it's also complicated?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. I'll take these two questions, and then we'll start from Cleopatra this time. You know the reason.
No, great questions. So to my knowledge, the Lebanon-Israel agreement is a good example, because they've put aside all the issues that are not resolvable politically and focused on one issue that had a commercial value. So you can't solve the whole pot, just take a small part of the pot and focus on that. And it takes really creative thinking, both in diplomacy and also technocratically, of how to make capital investment and political governance work together. To your questions, Mrs. Ambassador. So I think the European Commission has the European Neighborhood Policy. It has the UFM, the Union for the Mediterranean, where all the countries of the region come together. I think the European Commission and the Council must decide what is the most effective vehicle, political vehicle, and financing vehicle that can jointly work together to give carrots and sticks to the governments of the region, how we measure value, and how policymaking can be effective and aligned to Europe's, because on the one hand, Europe, we are Europe's immediate neighborhood, right? The non-European and the European countries. We are frontline to Africa. It's an untapped region. I mean, we're looking at India, interconnector into Europe, coming through the Gulf, and Gabriel spoke earlier. How is that going to happen? And how would Europe benefit if its financing tools and its political tools are not focused and aligned? I mean, we are a region of untapped trade value chains. We are siloed markets. We are not interconnected markets like China has Southeast Asia and North America has South America. We are Europe's trade frontier, and we are nowhere.
Thank
I mean,
you.
this should worry Europe.
Yeah.
Last
Please.
point. I've been a witness or a part of teams in oil and gas companies that have risked capital to explore offshore Israel and Cyprus and Egypt. They were risk tolerant to put capital here and create the momentum for governments to start talking to each other, because before that happened, there wasn't an intergovernmental agreement. We have the Energy Gas Forum, East Med Energy Gas Forum, that can be transformed to include more countries of the region and outside the region, to create that connectivity between capital and political governance. So we have the tools, we just need to have leadership to make it work.
Thank you very much, Cleopatra. This is really crucial. Yeah, somebody needs to connect the dots, and you said during your speech at the opening remarks that you are seeing EU to redesign a new neighborhood policy, or whatever this needs to be called, because EU is a point of attraction to many non-EU members, and that could provide some stability. Initially, 20 years ago, until Arab Spring, neighborhood policy provided a sense of stability. This is how Israel and Lebanon concluded this agreement. This is how oil companies were risking all these investments and plans. So initially, carrots and sticks were fine, but then in the aftermath of Arab Spring, something went wrong, or European Union had other priorities or more internal issues to deal with. Therefore, it is high time to demand for new measures that will extend more stability to the region, which will enable us to do more work in this area, because it is really needed. Gabriel, I am sure you have comments about geopolitical issues, but very brief, please.
Very briefly. Very briefly. It is an historical moment that Israel and Lebanon have agreed upon their maritime zones and the borders. There is no doubt about it. It is historical also the intervention of the U.S. and the intervention of the U.S. and the focusing on a certain issue between two countries recognized internationally that are in war with each other, and to have a line on their maritime zones, this is of great importance. It's not over yet, though. Total has started to search, to drill and find and export gas from the certain place is another issue. Also, it is a good start in order to talk about the land borders. Amos Hochstein was in Israel for several times from the beginning of summer and until today, and sometimes that we do not know. And we see a technical crisis with the blue zone of UNIFIL between Israel and Lebanon. They are starting to see how it is implemented, this agreement on maritime borders, before Total finds out if the gas reserves are able to be exported. They catch this opportunity, grab this opportunity to find a solution on the real issue, which is the land borders.
Thank you. I think, Theo, you want to add a few sentences?
Final remarks. Not the IE specialist here, so I'll focus more on the question about cost of inaction. And I think that's a very important question, and it's in the spotlight of academics trying to put a price, cost on an action. And Americans are very, they like to put price tags on things. And this is what they do as well with natural capital. They value things. And that helps them then, by putting a value on something, they can, by modeling, they can see the cost of inaction, right? And there are academic analysis on what is the cost of kicking the can down the road and not doing something and not spending money now. The cost in the future would be much higher, multiple times higher. If you, not per se by direct damages, but it might be extreme events. It might be migration. All these have multiple effect in terms of cost. Europeans are not so willing to put price on natural and capital and on things. They tend, like the British, they tend to put down objectives and find in 10 years' time what they're going to do to meet those objectives. Personally, I haven't yet concluded what's best. It's a different approach, but in any case, I think either if we put an exact price tag or if we see the consequences without putting the value down, it's important to realize that the consequences are coming, and they're coming quickly, and they're going to be multiple times more costly than investing in something that could reduce emission.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all for this very interactive session. Definitely, it's 1 hour is not enough to discuss energy security and decarbonization. As Nicholas moved in, I think in the next forum, we need more energy, climate-related discussions. This is imperative. The conclusion is that we need to achieve more interconnectivity in the region, because not just the environmental facts, but also political conditions are now dictating us that cooperation is a must and necessity. Otherwise, we will not be able to cope with these challenges. And as Cleopatra said, we are late in doing so. That's why we need to expedite the process. Thank you very much all, and we look forward to seeing you.